Hi, my name is Todd Wolfe, and as you can see, I'm holding a guitar, and that's what I do. I play guitar, and grew up. Basically, I was born in the '50s and grew up in the '60s, and got the bug like a lot of other people. I guess it started when the Beatles first came out and appeared on the what we had a show called the Ed Sullivan Show, and I think the seed was planted when I saw George Harrison playing a guitar and thought, well, that was a pretty cool thing. And somehow the guitar always appealed to me more than the other instruments. And I didn't play anything. There was no really music in the family other than listening to the radio. So from that point, we had the first British invasion that was sort of planting the seed, the Beatles first, and then the Rolling Stones, the Animals, and Dave Clark Five. And just more and more music was coming out, some music in America, but it seemed that a lot of the music that we were interested in was coming from England, from Great Britain. And then there was all of a sudden the bands like the Cream showed up, and Eric Clapton, and then shortly afterwards Jimi Hendrix, and we were listening to the Yardbirds, and of course you had Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Jimmy Page. And then Fleetwood Mac, John Mayall's Blues Breakers had some of my favorite guitar players that were a big influence to me, which was Eric Clapton and Peter Green and Mick Taylor, and started to get the urge to want to play a guitar. And by the time I was 13, I got my first guitar and sort of messed around with it, dabbled a little bit, and it didn't get too into it. I was still more of a fan of music. And then within the next couple of years, started to play more and more. And then with my buddies in the neighborhood, and we had our bands. We did Battle of the Bands and played in garages and played in people's basements. And that kind of music was a big influence to me. And then it came back in America, guys like Mike Bloomfield and Johnny Winter. And then that all traced back to blues guys like the Kings, Freddie King, B.B. King, Albert King, Otis Rush, Buddy Guy being influences in the playing. So a lot of the playing that I did then and still do now are very blues based on old riffs and things like that. Things like the simplest of them. Just different blues licks and sort of making them your own and working them into the music and learning things like vibrato. So all of this, as far as the lead guitar was, of course, very appealing, and started getting into wanting to be more like the guitar heroes of the day, Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck. And then later on, guys like Rory Gallagher, and just wanting to go out and rip it up on the guitar. And even the instruments became an important thing. I mean, I basically play Gibsons and Fenders, and this particular guitar isn't a guitar that I've used in a long time. I bought this back when I was in high school. And it's sort of a combination of guitars. It was an old gold top, and it was converted to a Sunburst before I bought it, and has the real PAFs in it that are considered the holy grail, the type of pickup that everybody wants to get that sound from. I think Clapton was the one who really popularized that particular sound, playing the humbuckers through a Marshall amplifier, and everybody seemed to be grabbing Les Pauls and Marshalls. You know, you had Peter Green picked up that sound, and Mick Taylor picked up that sound, and you had guys like Martin Barr, a lot of different people playing that sound. And then, of course, you had Jimi Hendrix with the Stratocaster. So all of these things planted in my head, the Stratocaster, the Telecaster, Les Pauls, 335s, mainly Gibsons and Fenders did it for me. And other guitars popular of the day, Gretsch was very popular, and Rickenbacker. And although I like listening to them, they didn't appeal to me as much. So through different periods of time, I got into different sounds, eventually getting a Stratocaster. The first two guitars I did own were Fender guitars. I owned a Fender Mustang first, and it was a late 60s. Bought it used from a very renowned music store in New York City called Manny's Music. And then eventually somebody gave me another Fender guitar, Fender Jaguar, and eventually I got a a Telecaster. And a Telecaster, I remember seeing Eric Clapton in Blind Faith, and he had a Telecaster. So I said, oh, I'd like to get one of those. And the particular Telecaster I bought was from the brother of Joey Ramone. They were from my neighborhood, the Ramones. And picked up that guitar. And eventually I did get a Les Paul, and this was the first Les Paul I bought. And I bought this back in, I think it was 73 or 74. So through the years, I switched back and forth, sometimes playing a Stratocaster, sometimes a Telecaster, for different sounds, different amplifiers. Currently, I usually use a Zinke, guy by the name of Bruce Zinke designs amp. He designed amplifiers for Fender, and I use his Blue Velvet amplifiers now. And always seems to be a search for tone. Our drummer, Roger Voss, and I were talking the other day about, like, how come guitarists are always changing around? And I think it's sort of this search for the Holy Grail, or it could even be an influence at the time. You get more into, like, I remember when I first got into Rory Gallagher, it's like, oh, I had to play a Stratocaster. And then you sort of are influenced by outside sounds and things that you want to achieve on a guitar. And sometimes even the format of your band. Like right now, we're a touring trio. And we have Roger Voss in the band on drums and Slavik Zinchenko on bass. And this trio developed in the last couple of years, and sometimes the sound that you want to get will be a bigger sound. I know that certain bands like James Gang and Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page and Joe Walsh started with Telecasters, but to get a thicker sound, switched to the Les Paul, because with humbuckers you just get a very fat sound. It's just a certain sound, a bigger, fatter sound, the way the humbuckers drive through an amp, you overdrive that sound. Whereas a Strat might be a thinner sound. And, sometimes we get it in our head, well, the Strat's good for rootsier, a little bit maybe country or just down-home music, and maybe the 335 or Les Paul is a little bit more rock or something. So you get an idea of what kind of sounds you want to get. And again, sometimes it could be a song. It could be the type of playing you're doing. I know that if I go to a certain session, somebody wanted me to sit in, I try to think, well, what kind of music does that person play, or what do they want me to do on this particular song? And I might tend to bring a certain guitar and an amplifier to achieve a certain sound. So there's always influences on what you want to achieve at that time. And that's basically what influences me at the time of using a certain guitar.